Obviously, I'm not in the sanctuary recording my children's message for today. Instead, I'm in my kitchen, and it's because I'm going to be doing a little bit of a messy experiment for the kids out there. So I got my apron on, so I think we're ready. So I got two ingredients here, vinegar and baking soda. Let's see what happens when I put the baking soda in the vinegar. Woohoo! Yikes, that's really making a mess, isn't it? You know, this is a good example of what life can be like sometimes. Adults, even like kids, can get very emotional and they do things that they shouldn't do. In fact, over a week ago, a lot of people got incredibly angry because of the way that the election results turned out. And they wanted to protest, but the things they did were not okay. Now, I want to tell you about another man who did a protest against something that he believed was wrong and others believed were wrong as well. His name was Martin Luther King Jr. And in the 1950s, the bus companies would not allow people who were black to sit anywhere they wanted in the bus. They made those people sit in the back of the bus. Now, Martin Luther King and many others knew that this was wrong. It shouldn't be made up to what color of skin you had to determine where you could sit on the bus. So they got angry, but they decided to protest. But what they did was they chose to do what's called a boycott. So they didn't ride those buses for almost a year. And they walked everywhere. And you know, the owners of that bus company, they realized at the end of that protest that they were wrong. And they allowed anybody to sit wherever they wanted. You know, this is really what Jesus wants for us too. He wants us to love one another, and it doesn't matter whether we've got the color skin of black or white or orange hair or purple hair or our political views. It doesn't matter. He wants us to love one another. In fact, Jesus wants us to even love our enemies. Now that's kind of tough to do sometimes, and it's kind of needs some self-control, which I think was something that was brought up in our last sermon in regards to fruits of the Spirit. So when you're angry and you want to protest to others and show your anger, I want you to think about Martin Luther King Jr. and what an effective way that he had to protest. And I'd like you to follow his example. In fact, so many people were inspired by Martin Luther King Jr. We even have a national holiday to remember him by and remember what he stood for. Today's Human Relations Day in the United Methodist Church, and tomorrow we celebrate Martin Luther King Jr. So what I'd like to leave you with is a quote from Martin Luther King Jr. that I thought was pretty pertinent to what we're talking about today. And what he said was, "Hate is too great a burden to bear. I choose to love." So please think about that in the week ahead. Let's close with a prayer. Lord, help us to love one another. No matter the color of our skin, no matter what political group we belong to, no matter what. We are all your children. Help us to act with love and not hate. Amen. Have a great week.